Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our commission meeting on this. Let's see, what day is it? 20th day of March, 2018. We're glad you're here. For those of you paying attention to the clock in the back of the room, good for you. But the clock up here, the atomic time is right, and the county's usually a little ahead of this curve anyway. Isn't that right, Brandon? Thank you for your affirmation. Our invocation today will be given by Pastor Dave Malinak, who's the pastor at the Berean Baptist Church, followed by that our Pledge of Allegiance by Lance Peterson. And our thought for the day will be by Commissioner Ebert. And present today are Commissioner Ebert, myself, and Commissioner Gibson. Are you on the phone? He was on the phone. We'll work on that as we go through.
Commissioner Gibson?
I'm here.
Okay, great. Thank you, Pastor Dave.
Let's pray. Gracious Lord, Heavenly Father, as we come to you right now, we ask that you would watch over the proceedings of this meeting. Lord, we are grateful to you for governments, that you've given us a way of governing ourselves and an expectation that comes with that. And ultimately, that you are Lord of everything. You've told us very specifically in the Psalms that the kings of the earth tend to rise up against you. And so often we see government deciding to displace you and to throw you off. And I pray that that would not be the case here. That we would rule in the fear of God, that our leaders would lead us in such a way that we're able to worship you freely, that we're able to follow your word in our everyday lives, and that we are able to live quiet and peaceable lives. I pray that they would protect and defend our liberties and make it possible for us to prosper and to pursue that without them stepping in the way of it. I pray that you'd give them wisdom in important decisions that they have to make, and that most of all they would recognize and remember that they are servants to the people, that this is the way that they serve. I pray that you guide them as they do, give them wisdom and grace and help. Help us to provide the support that they need while at the same time holding them accountable. And I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Would the audience please rise and repeat with me the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Lance. Appreciate your attendance today. Really quickly, I just have a quick thought. Thomas Jefferson once said, we in America do not have government by the majority. We have government by the majority who participate. And I think what he's getting at is it's extremely important for you to be a part of the process of electing, vetting, and voting for your elected officials. Far too often we leave it to others, and then we have a tendency to be a little frustrated with what may be happening. And so in this time and in this season, I would suggest, and from a commission perspective, we would suggest and strongly encourage you to be part of the process. Part of that process starts tonight in our caucus meetings. And so if you are interested, or if I'm just reminding you and you just realized it today, you can go to either the Republican website or the Democratic website and find where your caucus locations are. And I would suggest that you be part of that process. The process starts tonight with the election of delegates. Those delegates will then go through a very hopefully thorough process of vetting candidates. Everything from senators to representatives to commissioners to sheriffs to treasurers and clerk auditors. And so tonight that all starts, and I will strongly encourage you to be part of that process. That's my thought for today.
Very good. We're glad to have you all here today. Today, our item number E on the agenda is our own Sheriff Terry Thompson. And he has some awards that he'd like to make presentations of. So, Sheriff, Mr. Toll, it's all yours.
Thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate you giving us a little bit of time. It'll only be about 2 hours, so,
Right.
yeah.
We'll settle in.
No, we promise we won't take that kind of time, but it's so nice of you to give us a few minutes to just give out some very well-deserved awards and recognize some of our good staff that do just great things for us. So thank you so much for giving us a few minutes, okay? And so we're going to start off with Sergeant Neely Adams, some known better as JR. Go on up, JR. Do you mind if I
No,
turn this
that'd be
thing around?
great. You're good at that. That works.
Okay, thank you. So we can kind of see where we're going here. And JR's got some of his family here today, and do you want to introduce them for us?
My mother's up here on the far right in the black and white. Barbara Adams, my wife, is to my left, Kimberly, and her mother, Charlene.
Thank you for being here today. It's good of you to be here. JR has done a great job for the Sheriff's Office in so many different ways for so many years, and we don't have all day to go over everything. But what we specifically want to recognize Neely for today is the incredible job that he's done as our motors instructor and supervisor for so many years. About 5 years?
8.
Eight total, and then you were running it for 5 years,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, so 8 total, and then he was supervisor over it for 8 years and instructor. And so he had the fortunate and lucky responsibility of taking care of various details that I would give him. And it wasn't uncommon for me to call him and say, yeah, we got one coming up like in 2 weeks. Can you get on this? And it's really a labor-intensive kind of process, because when you're putting together a ride, which may be 100 or 200 motorcycles, you have to have all your ducks in a row, have all your T's crossed and your I's dotted, and you've got to have the right permits and work with all the right people. And so there's a lot of building relationships with all of the rest of the agencies in the state of Utah with their motors to get them all there. And sometimes it's as many as 20 or 30 other motors.
Yes.
So it's really a process and quite labor intensive, and working with UDOT on permits and all those kind of things. And then of course there's all the normal summertime activities of riding in all the parades and being kind of helping us be that face of the sheriff's office out there for the public to see and look good in the parades and look shiny and have all your doing all your little, they're riding their little patterns and stuff in the parade and all that kind of thing.
Slow maneuvers.
Slow maneuvers. And I would never share with you, for example, the fact that hypothetically, he might have tipped over in a parade, like right in front of the sheriff's truck. And I would never tell you that a 14-year-old girl helped him pick up his motorcycle.
Key is don't run out of gas.
Don't run out of gas. So thousands of hours of that. And really, if you haven't attended and really ridden these very, very technical patterns, I went through a 2-week school back in the late 90s. And one of the most difficult training I've ever attended, even though I've ridden a motorcycle forever.
Yeah.
And so it's just really a challenge, and these guys make it look easy. So Neely's done such a wonderful job for us. We really appreciate him being here today. And so I'm going to read his Medal of Merit for the time that Sergeant Neely Adams ran that unit for us. You hold this for just a second.
Yep.
I usually bring my backup glasses. And
You want us to get a 14-year-old girl to help you with those?
I could use one, thank you. So, at the risk of looking old, I got to put my other eyes on. Thank you, Neely. Okay. Weber County Sheriff's Office Medal of Merit awarded to Sergeant Neely Adams. Sergeant Neely Adams took over the motors program for the Weber County Sheriff's Office in June 2011 and remained until January 2017. During the 6 years that Sergeant Adams was in charge of the program, he established relations across the state of Utah with all agencies where our motor squad was called upon for many events and funeral details. Sergeant Adams also coordinated and guided many events throughout Weber County, making sure the events ran smooth and without accidents or injuries. Sergeant Adams dedicated a lot of personal time and effort over the years to make our motor squad more professional and recognized as one of the best. Thank you, Sergeant Adams, for your dedication and leadership during your time as a motor squad leader and making our team the best in the West. Thank you, Neely.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate
Give him a hand. We want to have,
Thank you.
don't go anywhere. We want to bring mom and mother-in-law and wife up, and can we get some pictures? You guys okay with that? Okay.
Everybody has to get the cameras ready.
Yeah. Pictures are good. Okay, you're all right.
You're okay.
We're not in a hurry.
Anywhere you want, you can come with me.
One, two, three.
Nate, you next?
Yep, got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, ready for the next one?
Please.
All righty. Eric, come on up. This is a sheriff's medal, which is fun, because those are the ones I get to decide where they go and who gets them, which is kind of fun for me. And this is for Eric Jones, who was previously, he's retired Sergeant Eric Jones from the sheriff's office. And he's been there forever. I think he started there when he was about 12. So, he's just kind of been there forever. But I've sure enjoyed working with Eric for nearly 30 years. Right now, Eric in his retirement, if you can call it that, right? You know that retirement where you work harder than you ever did before you retired? We made several years ago, it's been 4 years now, about 4 years ago, the county purchased the Swanson Tactical Training Center shooting range out in Weber Industrial Park, and it's the Weber County Sports Shooting Complex, and we needed a director. So Eric drew the short straw. We've had Eric running it for 4 years now, and I say that because, holy crap, talk about a lot of work. You know, it's one of those things that, sounds from the outside, well, you're just kind of running a gun range, right? Well, that's the tip of the iceberg. Am I wrong?
That is true.
So it had been in existence for about a decade, but was not open to the public. It was open to law enforcement, military. And so when it came to that transition process, to be able to open the range to the public, there was a lot of improvements that had to be made. Everything from ballistic shooting booths to moving target systems, baffling, and some radiant heat, increased ventilation, and all those kinds of things that go into a nice, safe facility, open and good for use with the public. And so all that process really took a lot of time and effort, and there's so many grants and those kind of things that go into funding that sort of a facility, and then managing and running all of the moving parts on just a few employees. Am I wrong? So it's been a challenge.
That is the key.
It's been a challenge. In addition to that, there's a whole nother challenge is we just couldn't possibly run this range without so many good volunteers involved in that process. And we've got over 100 volunteers out there, 120 volunteers out there on a regular basis, keeping shifts covered and taking care of the process of those of recreational shooters coming and going and just manning the range and maintaining the safety on the range is such a huge responsibility. And Eric has done just a superb job at that, and he didn't ever plan, I don't think, one day running a range. I mean, he was just having fun, right? In law enforcement, because that's what we do, because we're kind of crazy that way. We love this job, and it was a great career. And then to turn around and follow that up with something so different. And yet Eric has done just such a phenomenal job out there. And I know that he wants to share just a few words with you. Is that okay, commissioners? You want to take a minute?
Yep, if I can. And I'm going to switch sides. Thanks, commissioners. I don't often get a chance to address you guys, and this is just a little kind of steal the second to talk about the range and kind of promote it a little bit. But first off, I'd like to thank Sheriff Thompson for not giving up on his 20-plus year pursuit to get this county a gun range, because that's how long it took to even get the ball rolling. Secondly, I'd like to thank the commissioners for having the foresight to purchase the range and see what an asset it could be to not only the public but law enforcement training. The Weber County Sports Shooting Complex has over 1,000 visitors every month between law enforcement and public. As we speak today, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for the entire western United States is training there today. That is over 100 officers, renting 700 hotel rooms, consuming 2,100 meals this week alone, not to mention everything from gas to entertainment. Those are benefits that are brought to this county because of that shooting complex. Every police agency in Weber County and the surrounding counties and state uses the facility, along with several federal agencies, the ATF, the U.S. Marshal Service, Internal Revenue Service, the U.S. Forest Service, and the Utah National Guard. On the public side of the house, we host hunter safety, bowling pin tournaments, rifle matches, high school rodeo shoots, and church youth groups weekly. In addition to that, the Boy Scouts of America now use the facility to accomplish their Eagle Merit Badges, something they were not able to do in Weber County. The George Wallen Veterans Home brings out a group of veterans every week to shoot out there just for a release from the stresses involved in their life. Lastly, I'd like to thank the volunteers the sheriff had mentioned about, because that's a crucial component to this. The Weber County Sports Shooting Complex is open 6 days a week, 10 hours a day. It's managed by myself and 2 other county employees, Glenn Valdez and Tammy Folkman. But the true magic to this facility is the 130 range volunteers that donate their time every single week to work out there. We have 130 volunteers working 10 hours a day, and it takes a minimum of 12 volunteers per day to run the range. Our volunteers have donated 27,000 hours. I'll repeat that. They have donated 27,000 hours for the 2017 year. And for 2018, because the rifle range is now open and being used more every day, they will donate up to 35,000 hours. That's donated hours to this county. So the use of the facility by both public and law enforcement is growing weekly. And that's just it, a little update for you. Thanks, Cheryl.
Isn't that amazing? You just don't see the full scope of that whole process out there in that facility. It's just incredible. And Eric's done such a great job. I'm going to hold this for just a second, Eric, while I put my my wife teases me about my fold-up shades, by the way. She really does. Hey, what do you do, right? Okay. Weber County Sheriff's Office Sheriff's Medal awarded to Eric Jones. This Sheriff's Medal and special recognition of excellent service to the Weber County Sheriff's Office is presented to Deputy Eric Jones, retired Sergeant Jones. Weber County made the decision to purchase and reconstruct the existing Swanson Tactical Training Center in 2013. Eric was designated as the new range director and assigned the monumental job of restoration of the range to accommodate the general public. Few understand the full picture of what it has really meant. Eric has overseen a substantial upgrade of all safety-related features to include project baffling, radiant heat, ventilation systems, sound mitigation, and logistical access. Further, he has spent countless hours on the funding of multiple individual projects with presentations to multiple groups, private and public. His efforts have offset costs to taxpayers in donations, grants, public and private use. He has instructed and managed well over 100 volunteers to run the facility 6 days a week for maximum benefit to the public. His accomplishments in making the range extremely successful are far too many to list. On any given day, observing the satisfaction on the smiling faces of public attending the Weber County Sports Shooting Complex is confirmation of a dedication and commitment to the Sheriff's Office and the public. So thank you, Art. Appreciate you. My brother, see your hand. Thank you, Penny. We're going to bring his beautiful wife, Penny, down, who I didn't have him introduce.
She's my partner in crime.
Come on back here.
One, two, three.
Good, your camera's all.
Perfect. Thank you.
Hi, Penny.
Thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate that. Could you excuse the families and folks that are here? Is that okay? Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. We'll continue with our agenda item number F. Our consent item, one under item F is a request for approval of warrants 1369 to 1385 and 426478 to 426721 in the amount of $2,648,000 and, excuse me, 648,000, let me start again, $2,648,945.38. Item 2 is a request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $91,804.85. Item 3 is a request for approval of the minutes for the meeting held on March the 13th, 2018. Item number 4 is a request from the Weber County Information Technology Office for approval to surplus computer equipment. And item 5 is a request for approval of a road dedication in the Ratcliffe subdivision, a one-lot subdivision located at 4409 West, 1800 South in Taylor. Any comments, Commissioners?
No comments or questions?
None being good, thank you. Mr. Hatch.
Hi. Happy Caucus Day and first day of spring.
Yeah, oh, thank you.
Chris brought that up, so I thought I'd...
Caucus Day or the Spring Day?
Spring Day. We issued 17 purchase orders this week for $92,000. A third of that amount, or $30,000, was for our IT department, and that will go towards PCs and monitor replacements. 23%, or $21,000, will go to the Ogden Eccles Conference Center to replace a boiler. 16%, or $15,000, is for the library, and that is for some book trucks as well as books. And then 11%, or $10,000, goes to the Golden Spike for concessions. As far as checks, we wrote 261 checks this week for $2.6 million. One third of that amount, or $877,000, was ramp grants awards, and the two cities that got the bulk of those in this round were Far West and Plain City. 15% of that amount, or $405,000, is for the library, and that is almost exclusively for the North Ogden branch construction. 12%, or $319,000, is for the transfer station. That's primarily the disposal fees. 7%, we had two amounts, about $180,000 to $190,000. Those were the monthly contributions that we make to the paramedic fund and the Weber Human Services.
Great. If there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion we adopt the consent items.
We have a motion?
I'll second.
Second. Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. The consent items are passed unanimously. Item number G under our action items, the first portion of that will be, or number one under that is from Lance Peterson, a request for approval of a contract between Weber County and Emergency Communications Network, LLC, OnSolve, to renew and extend existing contract with the ECN, Code Red, for 3 more years for wide area emergency alert. Mr. Peterson.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you.
Morning.
What you have before you is a letter that indicates to Code Red OnSolve that we wish to exercise the contract extension. This Code Red system is a partnership between all 6 northern Utah counties: Davis, Morgan, Weber, Box Elder, Cache, and Rich. We're the purchasing agent for the 6 counties regarding this service. Code Red is the provider that we use to do reverse notifications, emergency notifications. And just a little trivia here, I ran some figures, and last year there were a total of 403 uses of the Code Red system in the 6 northern counties. A total of 320,009 phones were called, and we used 118,588 minutes in that service there. So we're well within the parameters of our contract, and just like to extend that. We've been very happy with the service we've been receiving.
So just the Code Red, just as I understand it, is a reverse call, or meaning if there is a situation of emergency in the area where your phone is located. So that could be where your home is or where anything is. Is that correct?
Exactly. We use the 911 database for the landlines. And then we also have an online registration system where you can take your cell phone and register it, and it geocodes it to the map to your home address. Businesses can also use it so that in off hours, they can get a notification on their cell phone if they've registered their cell phone with their business.
So you register your cell phone on Code Red, on the Code Red app, and you can get notified if there's an emergency at that particular location.
You bet.
So if you're sleeping and something's going on outside, you get a telephone call that says, hey, something's going on outside, and you get a few extra precious minutes depending on what the situation is.
Yes.
Great. That was more of an advertisement than an understanding, but
I
thank
know.
you.
Thank you.
That was the point.
That was great.
Code Red, that's a great app.
It is.
We like that here.
We like it.
Commissioners, are there any questions with regards to item 1 on action items?
I'll make a motion that we approve the contract between Weber County and Emergency Communications Network.
We have a motion, and I'll second that motion. I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
County. Aye.
Aye. Good. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank
you. We'll go on to item number 2. Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Wilkinson, Sean Wilkinson, a request for approval of a fee ordinance amendment relating to the Weber County Community and Economic Development Department, Solid Waste Division, Section 16-2-9 of the Solid Waste Fees. Mr. Wilkinson.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Commissioners, I was here presenting the same ordinance last week as a first reading. This will be the second and final reading of this ordinance. But the County Solid Waste Division is requesting this fee ordinance amendment for the purpose of raising the general waste tipping fee at the county transfer station. The request is in response to waste transportation cost increases that MBI Trucking has passed on to Republic Services, who is the county's contracted waste removal provider. The current waste tipping fee at the transfer station is $36.90 per ton. And the cost of the transportation increase is $2.48 per ton. Republic Services has agreed to absorb half of that cost through the end of June of this year, requiring an increase of $1.24 per ton during the next 2 months, and bringing the tipping fee to $38.14. Then beginning July 1st, 2018, the additional $1.24 per ton will be assessed, and the tipping fee will be $39.38 per ton. These increases have been reviewed by the Solid Waste Subcommittee and were presented to the full WACOG board as well. So we are asking this morning for your approval of this fee increase.
Comments, commissioners?
We had a pretty good discussion in our last meeting about it. We're also looking at alternative methods for disposal of waste, and that continues to move forward. So I don't have any further discussions. There's been no new information presented since the last reading.
Ordinance 3.
You ready?
Number 3.
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 3, amending the Weber County Community Economic Development for the Solid Waste Division fee schedule.
I have a motion.
I'll second, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. If there's no more comments, then I'll call for the roll call vote.
Commissioner Hebert?
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson?
Aye.
Chair Harvey?
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Item number 3 is a request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and ES&S for the purchase of voting equipment to be used in the Weber County elections. Ryan, congratulations.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is an exciting time for us.
It was almost like a graduation walk up to it was wonderful.
I just need my cap and gown, right?
Yeah. You've done it. This is it.
I actually will be graduating with a master's degree in August, so this is just an early walk for that. So, Commissioners, before you have the contract to purchase new voting equipment. This is something that we've talked about for quite a long time, and we've put a lot of work and effort into it, and we're excited to get to this point. The contract will be with ES&S. They're the largest election vendor in the country. We actually have a representative from ES&S with us today. We're doing our training on this new system just to make sure that we're able to implement that in time for June. Yes, we're very hopeful. So this contract contains an upfront cost as well as recurring maintenance costs. We've opted to pay for the equipment upfront rather than finance it. That was just due to the steep financing charges that would have been in place there. We'll be able to save about $12,000 worth of interest by doing that, and for us, that's a big deal in our department. Also, we were able to get funding from the legislature, $4.5 million statewide, one-time money, as well as $500,000 ongoing, and that ongoing money is going to be something that's huge for the elections world in the state, so that we can continually keep up to date. So that was really, I think, a big win in the legislature this time around. The last thing that we also anticipate is getting an 8% rebate off of the purchase price due to the volume of counties, as well as that funding. There's a mechanism there to where we can get an 8% discount on that. So really this contract will modernize and secure our voting system for the next 10 to 15 years.
Any comments, Commissioners?
How many counties went with this vendor?
For this year, there are 18 counties that have signed contracts. With the state funding, they anticipate a couple of more going. Eventually, we anticipate probably all of the counties going to this.
No more questions. Just wanted to say congratulations. I know a tremendous amount of work's been put into this. Mr. Hatch has had this in his budget for several years because there was a tremendous need. And so just thanks for all the tremendous work at a state level.
Thank you.
Any other comments? I've just got to, I will reiterate to you, Mr. Hatch and Mr. Calley, you are often seen down at the Capitol this year during the legislature. I commend our legislative group for helping make sure that this, how many million was this project in total?
4.5 up front and then 500,000 ongoing.
So this is this has significant impact to the Weber County budget. I know that both of you had a part of that, and philosophically speaking, in some of those budget discussions, I'm grateful for your work. This is a huge deal for Weber County and the taxpayers, as it is for the state. I'm grateful for Spencer Cox and the Lieutenant Governor's office for their saying that this is the right thing to do for a statewide, to all be in harmony together. And it's it's awesome.
And I would just say, there's been a tremendous amount of vetting. I mean, I was fortunate enough to have Mr. Calley invite me on several different occasions to look at different machines and see how they worked at different conventions, and there was a tremendous amount of time in making sure that the machines that you are, the vendor you're looking at right now was worked to every specification you had. So I never thought I'd be looking at that many voting machines, but we spent a lot of time. So thank you.
We'll miss the hanging Chad, won't we?
No, we won't.
Great. If there's no other comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the contract by and between Weber County and ES&S for the purchase of voting equipment to be used in the Weber County elections.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. With that, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. On to item number 4. Thank you, Mr. Calley. Charlie Ewert. This is a request for approval of an amendment to the cooperative agreement by and between Weber County and UDOT for the Utah Department of Transportation to convert TAP funds. This amendment will also add $100,000 from UDOT to the Wolf Creek Drive Pathway project. Mr. Ewert.
I don't have any more of a presentation than what you just read. $100,000 extra dollars from UDOT for a total of $167,000 coming from UDOT. It's a pathway along a UDOT right-of-way. We put a little bit of money into it and in-kind donations, and they've put a lot of money into it, and we're hoping to have that done this year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any comments or questions for Mr. Ewert?
No, I think we spent a lot of time talking about the need for this pathway and how it connects that community, so I'm happy to see it continuing to move forward.
Are there any other comments? None being heard, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the amendment to the cooperative agreement by and between Weber County and UDOT to convert TAP funds in the amount listed, for the project listed.
We have a motion.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for item number 4. Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Ewert, you have the next 3. Go ahead with item number 5.
Sorry for stacking your agenda.
You're good.
I'd like to work efficiently and get everything done at once. This one, excuse me, for that pathway that we just approved a little bit of money for, we needed a little bit of right-of-way from a couple of property owners. The right-of-way width of SR 158 isn't very well defined. We don't actually know if these rights-of-way easements across these property owners' lands, if they are even absolutely necessary. It's written into the agreement that if it's not necessary, it's null and void, which means that at a later time, if UDOT or the county determines that the right-of-way width of 158 is sufficient and the pathway is actually built within the public right-of-way, then these easements don't mean anything. Each landowner donated without cost. The easements you see in front of you, they're all signed, ready to be executed. Mr. Chairman commented about one of them. It was signed electronically through a title company, and so when you go to sign that document, we'll have to work through a title company to get that signed and executed.
Do we have any legal issues with that, Mr. Crowder?
No, I spoke with Mr. Erickson this morning, who was the attorney who reviewed these agreements, and he approved them.
Great. Super. Thank you for that detail. Any comments? Then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the easements for the Wolf Creek Drive pathway that have been donated.
Donated. That's awesome. Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote now. All in favor? Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Item number 6, Mr. Ewert, is a request for the decision regarding a ZTA number 2017-14, a request to amend the PRUD code to allow less resulting dwelling units in exchange from one open space area.
So sorry about that agenda line. It's a little confusing. As you recall from your January 2nd, 2018 meeting, we had a request from a landowner to amend the county code to change the PRUD ordinance to require less units if they have more open space. Right now the code, I think, requires 20, it might be 24 units in a PRUD in order to do the PRUD or to comply with the PRD requirements. They asked that to be reduced down to 6 if they have more open space. If you'll recall from that meeting, the discussion was revolving around how the Planning Commission wants to see the PRUD code changed from an administrative conditional use permit process to a legislative process. We're still in the process of that. A decision on this item was postponed until this month, pending a little bit more work being done on the PRUD code. We've had a lot going on in our office, and we haven't been able to make a lot of headroom on that. It's still moving, and I would anticipate a few more months before that's ready. And so with this, I would recommend maybe denying the application for the amendment. The changes that are being requested, I've already grafted into those other changes that are coming forward in the next few months. And so even though you may deny this application, it doesn't mean you're denying the concept or the idea. It can still be incorporated into that later amendment. If you're not comfortable with denying, you can certainly table it for a later time when that PRUD amendment comes forward.
Discussion, commissioners, what's your pleasure?
We have someone to speak to the request.
I didn't see the applicant in the room.
And at this point, you feel that the request, you're not giving a thumbs up or thumbs down to the request. You're just saying that we're in the process of reviewing the whole PRUD.
Right.
And some of this may be incorporated into it. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
this has already been written in. The request has already been written into the revisions to the PRUD ordinance, and will be forwarded to you guys within the next few months, almost exactly as they've asked for it. And so it'll still come down the pipeline. It can still be approved.
Okay.
Just open to close this file.
Who's the requester on this?
The applicant is, excuse me, a person by the name of, last name is Jacobson. She is a consultant out of Park City.
And have you talked to them? Do you have any idea if this will have a negative impact on their development right now?
The negative impact is timing, and getting the timing moved forward. As you'll see on the very next agenda item, we're asking the county commission to approve a resolution enacting pending legislation, so that we're permanently holding any new application for PRUD, pending the adoption of the modifications to the PRUD code. How that applies in this case is, even though it is delay in whatever they may want to do in amending or creating a new PRUD, it's going to be 6s if that other resolution gets approved, because there's going to be a delay anyway.
I have concern with regards to the expeditious nature of development, and I'd like to see that progress as efficiently as possible, which to me means not making any mistakes, but still performing, especially our part, in a timely manner. We can't have any say on what the developer decides or builder decides to do. Give me the worst case scenario, Charlie, when this whole, I know that you're busy, but when's the worst case that this is going to come back before us?
I would say worst case would be midsummer, but I anticipate much sooner than that. I'm thinking May, end of May, you'll see. Well, at least the Planning Commission will see some drafts. The Planning Commission needs to go through their process. They may see it at work session 3 or 4 times before it comes to the County Commission.
A lot of times, Charlie, getting developers to be able to move iron or to move equipment and get those things in their pipeline of work, that's important also for fall or even going into winter.
Yeah.
So I'd like to, while it's been made motion, I would like to see you guys get that done. Midsummer for me, is a little too long. I'd like to see you put a deadline, maybe even on yourselves, of maybe the 15th or so of June. That gives you, maybe the 20th of June still gives you 3 months, but not let it go any further than that. Rick, does that sound reasonable? Okay. But
We'll get it done.
So really quickly, what you're saying is the next item, I just want to make sure we're on the same page, basically is saying until that PRUD has been addressed, you are going to put a freeze on any new PRUDs.
Right.
And so even if we passed item number 6, it wouldn't allow them to move forward because you're going to freeze those PRUDs.
Actually, if you were to pass item number 6 and they were to submit an application for a new PRUD, correct. I apologize. Yes, if number 7 is passed, it'd be too late to submit a new application. So even if number 6 gets approved, they would still be delayed.
So rather than deny it, I would make a motion, we just table it for now and then move to number 7. Until we do number 7, number 6 is pointless.
There's been a motion to table. Do we need a motion, Chris? I mean, do we need a second on that motion?
Yeah, if you're going to do a motion to table, I would recommend a second.
Okay. Is there a second? Great. We have a motion and a second to table this. I'll call for a vote just out of formality. All in favor to table item number 6, say aye. Aye. Thank you. That motion is tabled. Item number 7 is a request to approve a resolution initiating proceedings to amend the land use code to turn decisions from PRUDs from administrative to legislative. Mr. Ewert.
Just very brief addition to what we've already discussed on this item. Under the state statute, if we enact pending legislation or go into formal proceedings to change the county's land use code, we have 180 days to make those changes from the time that we start that work or enact that pending legislation. What that does, 180 days, basically says we're not required to process applications under whatever that land use code is, pending the outcome of whatever that new legislation is. Gives the county commission the flexibility to kind of work with some new laws and implement some new ideas without having people vested in the old code by submitting an application. An alternative to doing this would be to repeal whatever ordinance is causing the problem, if there is something causing a problem, so nobody can apply under that, and then fix the code in our own time, and then implement that new code. What this does is it allows it so we don't have to make the repeal. We could just go through making the changes. Gives us about 6 months to get that done. And you just asked that it be done in June, so we won't take the full 6 months.
You've got state statute there, but we're just asking to be twice as efficient.
Yeah, and the state statute, we don't have to go to the 6 months. It just, that's our maximum time.
Any discussion?
I actually have a comment, just a clarification for Mr. Ewert. Is this a temporary land use ordinance, or is this just the formal initiation of the process to amend the land use code?
Second one. The formal initiation process.
So they can still submit an application if they want to be vested in the old code. We're still going to accept those, but as far as processing them, there could be that delay as we sort things out.
Yeah, so as Chris mentioned, an application can still come in. If the 180 days expires and we still haven't adopted the modifications or new code, the applicant is entitled under the code that exists at the time they submitted. So even though we're pushing pause on processing at the end of the 6 month period, if we're not done, they're entitled to the old code. So one of the benefits of doing the pending legislation as opposed to a temporary zoning ordinance or as opposed to repealing an ordinance.
Very good. Any discussion?
Do you have any idea the impact on developers that are out there that are already looking or planning?
We've had very higher level discussions with with 2 or 3 landowners about the possibility of doing planned residential unit development. We haven't received any formal applications. We haven't done any pre-application meetings, and so people are scoping, but there isn't anyone, to my knowledge, that's ready to move on this. If you read through the resolution, there is a caveat. Any development that has a master plan agreement or development agreement that couldn't be executed without PRUDs, they would still be allowed to submit. So if Wolf Creek wants to submit under PRUD, or Powder Mountain or Snow Basin, those are the 3 I'm thinking on the top of my head. There might be a few more out there. They can still submit and still be entitled to process and approval under PRUD.
It's just a special condition.
Right. It's the properties that haven't been previously considered for master planning or PRUD.
There's any other questions? None being heard, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion we approve the resolution, which is number 15, initiating proceedings to amend the land use code to turn decisions from PRUDs from administrative to legislative, with the caveat concern is we basically pushed all of those construction developments probably into next year because of building seasons. But I think that us getting the PRUD right the first time is extremely important.
Just those portions of those things. We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for resolution, item number 7, which is resolution number 15. Fatima, if you'd call for the vote or call for it, please.
Commissioner Bieber?
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson? Commissioner Gibson?
Aye.
And Chair Harvey?
Aye. That resolution carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Charlie. One other thing, for those in the room and for those listening who might be listening to this later on, I'll remind you that on Wednesday the 28th, if you want to be involved in planning, on Wednesday the 28th of March, out at West Weber Elementary School at 6:30, there's a West Weber visioning meeting, and that's for people to give input on what they want their area to look like in future years, whether it's 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now. So I would encourage you to be a part of that. Again, that's Wednesday, the 28th of March at 6:30 p.m. at West Weber Elementary. Thank you, Charlie.
Great plug. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, can
Yes.
you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Commissioner. Go ahead.
Could I just ask a favor? I'm really having a hard time hearing, especially you. I seem to be hearing Fatima well and Commissioner Ebert a little bit better. But you and the podium microphone, if you would just do me a favor and maybe speak into the microphone just a little closer, that would really help me. Thank you.
You bet. No problem. Thanks for saying something. Item number 8 is a request for approval of a contract. Is that better?
It is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Ogden City Redevelopment Agency to allow the Ogden City Redevelopment Agency to use the tax increment from the Adams Place project area to fund the project area and plan. Our presenter is Ms. Holland Wilbanks.
Hello, thank you.
Thanky, Ms. Wilbanks.
It's exactly what you said. We have been here. I have Mr. Brandon Cooper, who's the Deputy Director for Ogden City Economic and Community Development, and he gave a wonderful presentation about 2 weeks ago that really detailed and outlined this program and what the agreement was and what the long-term impact. And this is an area that we haven't seen development in the past at least 40, 50 years. So we really feel like being able to energize this area can make some major change for this particular area. You have had an opportunity to review the agreement. We've also reviewed internally with some of our other elected officials and county directors, and they've provided some feedback. So I feel like you've had a great chance to understand and know the interlocal agreement terms. However, if you have any questions or concerns, I'd love to be able to answer them. Or also with Brandon here, he can also answer those as well.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioners, call for questions on item number 8. If there are any.
Mr. Cooper, could you come up and just touch base on the BDO and how a CRA has effectually changed that project area? Would you mind?
So, if I understand you correctly, the question is about the
BDO.
The BDO
yes, because a lot of
project
folks
area?
may not, from a short-term perspective, understand the long-term CRA impacts. And I think the BDO is an example of what
Sure.
a properly ran RDA at that point, but now CRA can have in area to help promote commercial growth, retail growth, residential growth. And I think that's a good example.
Sorry, just by way of acronyms, the BDO, or Business Depot Ogden, is the former DDO, or the Defense Depot Ogden, so people, just so to clarify where that property is.
That's correct. And the actual official name of the RDA is the DDO EDA. So take that.
Put that to music.
Yeah. But it's a perfect example. It's a great question. The DDO Economic Development Area was established when the BRAC closure happened back in 1998, 99, 2000, that time frame. And at that time, the land was transitioning to Ogden City, and in partnership with Boyer, we entered into a master lease that is a multi-decade master lease that allows for the development of the project. And as a tool to help with that, in addition to some bonding that the city did, there was enacted an economic development area for the purpose of commercial development. And it was a 20-year period. It expires in 2019, so that's next year. We expect to see a great investment return, both from the city and the county standpoint, from that area. It went from a land basis of about $22,000, so the taxable valuation of the land, I believe it's close to 1,300 acres. The taxable valuation of that land at that time in 1999 was about $2,200. We anticipate that the new valuation at the end of tax year 2019 to be over $450 million. In addition to the valuation of that land and those buildings, the area went from about 0 jobs to over 6,000 jobs. So it's a great example of not only commercial development in the warehouse, distribution, and light industrial sectors, but also a great example of the tools that RDAs can be to communities in reinvesting in areas that don't have a bright future or have seen disinvestment in previous years. So we use the examples and the lessons that we've learned from that experience, and we try to apply them in all the new RDAs that we're enacting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding item 8 on our agenda?
I have a question or two.
Great. Go ahead, Commissioner.
So I appreciate, Brandon, your comments and your explanation of this, and I appreciated the explanation that was given a few weeks ago when it was presented in the first place. I appreciate the willingness that you have from a city perspective to take the lead on some of these difficult issues, and I certainly agree with the general direction and the ability that we have as a county to partner with the city on these types of things. I'm grateful for that. Since this was brought to us a few weeks ago, I have had several conversations with a lot of our financial folks of the county, and several of them have expressed concerns about the level of participation for the county in this particular case. And I understand that there are some changes that have been made in that manner to where that level may be more acceptable, but I can't see who's in the room. I'm just wondering if either Mr. Hatch or Mr. Bond is there, if either of them could weigh in on anything that has made them feel more comfortable with this latest iteration. Because again, as a county commissioner, I rely so heavily upon the experts to help me wade through some of these difficult financial issues. And just curious if there's any movement in your positions as to whether or not this makes sense from a countywide taxpayer perspective.
Commissioner, Mr. Bond is not in the room, but Mr. Hatch is. Mr. Hatch, will you please speak to that?
Absolutely. And thank you, Commissioner Gibson, for the question. And it's important to note that when the finance guys are talking about RDAs, we look at it strictly from a finance perspective. And so anytime we see participation rates close to 100% or at 100%, our financial antenna go up, and and we think, well, there's built-in inflation that we have to worry about, and basically some financial concerns about giving away 100% of the increment. However, even though we're financial guys, we do realize that finance isn't everything in the world, and that RDA participation or CRA participation can provide a lot of benefits that are not financial. And we don't even pretend to have an understanding about those. Our concerns with this one, with the Adams Avenue CRA, is that we hadn't seen any detailed analysis done on those types of benefits, realizing fully that as the financial guys, that's really not even our bailiwick. And so our concerns were primarily based on the financial area, or the financial details of the agreement. However, we recognize that the commission is, you have a broader picture, and you take into consideration a lot of things in addition to the financial aspects. And so for that reason, when we looked at this, we said, well, from a strict financial standpoint, we would like some more time to be able to vet this and think about it. However, we realize there are a lot of other factors involved. And so while we're not necessarily fully comfortable going with a 100% participation rate, we totally recognize that that's just one piece in the final decision-making process, and we support the county's decision to move forward.
Commissioner Gibson.
Okay, so I appreciate the explanation. I guess I didn't hear in my mind a clear answer as to, did anything specifically change that makes you more comfortable now?
So originally, the original agreement that we were reviewing initially with the Finance Committee and the team involved, a couple of the terms did change from a legal perspective. We have more definition in the fact that whichever comes first, either the 25-year period or the cap amount of the tax. So it will end once one of those has been reached. And I think our attorneys feel a little bit more comfortable with the type of language that's written in the document now as opposed to where it was initially. We also were at a 10% administrative fee. That was an expense to the county, and we've negotiated that down to a 5%, so there's some savings there. The other deal points remained the same, understanding the positive impact that we could see from this type of agreement in a neighborhood. One of the things that's really beneficial is to know that this reinvestment goes straight back to the developer. So we will see that in that area energized quickly, and I think that as from an economic development standpoint, it's one of the things that we support. So it's a cost benefit, understanding the terms and what that means in the long term. However, the long run impact, and as Brandon has been able to show repeatedly with some of their other agreements, and the way they've tweaked the things that they've done year over year with RDAs and CRAs in order to define those a little bit better. From an economic development standpoint, we think this is a great opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Wilbanks.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Hatch.
I forgot to include that 5% reduction in the administration fee. So, Commissioner Gibson, that I didn't mention that, but I should have. That reduction in the administration fee was a positive step that was made as part of the negotiation process.
Thank you, Mr. Hatch.
And this process has just highlighted our ability to be able to communicate more quickly and effectively the way that we're now going to approach agreements like this with Ogden City and our other partners, so that we can bring in the financial side quickly, along with what that means for our overall budget as the county and how that affects us on the economic development side.
Thank you, Ms. Wilbanks. Commissioner Gibson, any other questions?
Is there, I've heard quite a bit about participation of Thane Fisher in this project. Is there any connection there?
I can't speak to that.
Brandon, will you come back to the mic so Commissioner Gibson can hear you and answer that question, please?
So the question is Thane Fisher and his development group involved in any way in this RDA? The answer to that is yes. We have received application for a participation and incentive agreement, which would be the mechanism that contributes to RDA tax increment to a developer. So we have received interest from Thane on one project, and we know of another project that could be pending.
But for just to answer my question, this wouldn't be exclusively to one developer. It would be this project. You're hoping to have how many developers involved in this?
Multiple. If you look at the list of the proposed projects that we see happening in the project area, there's a number of them that have varying owners and other developers that would be interested. So Thane Fisher and his group would just be one of many.
Another question while you're at the mic, and Commissioner Gibson, I'll ask you a question or have you follow up in a moment. But there are other RDAs or CRAs that Weber County has entered into with Ogden City over the last decade in this area. One that I'm familiar with is the one that now is the Solomon Center, or what? You can explain that? I think this building currently is sitting in a RDA or a CRA. This Weber Center is sitting in one, and there's another one over in that area. Excuse me, I'm pointing to the southwest of us, but that would be over the Kiesel project. Can you just take just a brief moment and explain those, or just are there multiple investors in those? That's something that's already been done. That was part of your presentation a couple of weeks ago. If you'd speak to that while you're at the mic, please.
Sure. Everything you said is true. The county building where we sit is in the East Washington urban renewal area. That was enacted and approved in 2010, I believe. The junction and its surrounding area is in the CBD Mall RDA, redevelopment area. That was enacted, I believe, in 1979 for the first mall, and then extended. Don't quote me on that. I'm trying to go off memory. The Kiesel CDA, the Community Development Area, was enacted in 2015. That includes the Kiesel building on 24th and Grant there. A number of buildings that include the post office, the old post office, the old Stevens Henniger building, the old Thorstensen and Proudfit buildings along Grant going to the north. So there are some contiguous RDA areas that essentially encompass most of the downtown.
And on this East Washington, we've seen the group of single-family or urban development on 23rd. For me, it's the old Wolf's Corner. The Jeffersons, some of those neat old historic mansions on Jefferson Avenue, are they part of that same RDA?
No.
Okay, is that another RDA then?
No, the Jefferson area, the historic Jefferson area, is not in an RDA.
So those are that's a byproduct of what's happened with some of the other RDAs.
Correct.
So we're seeing some other growth in surrounding areas because there's been some activities in other RDAs.
Right.
Thank you. Would you mind just staying close in case there are other questions of you, please? Commissioner Gibson, back to you.
Thanks for the conversation. And again, I just want to reiterate, I'm in favor of the tools that we have being used to our advantage. And in this particular case, as per our discussion when we first heard about this a few weeks ago, I think that in concept, this particular proposal makes sense. I guess my concern is making sure that obviously each one is different, but yet we also ought to be consistent in the way that they're applied and the way that we understand them. And as of Friday, I was still sensing major concern from many of our financial folks that had expressed to me that they felt like they had not had time to adequately dig into the numbers here as to where, how this might completely affect us in the end. And I understand that there was some delay in how this was processed, and I appreciate the desire of the city, and frankly, the sooner we move on, the better off we are as far as getting things going here. But I also want to make sure that it's done right, and my sense, even as of Friday, major concern with some of the details here from those experts that I lean on and trust to make a good decision. And so while I look at this from a little bit more of a broad perspective, I have to have, and I'm supportive from that perspective, I have to have the input and the influence from those who make their living in the details and the numbers. And I'm just not quite sure that we have that yet. And so my inclination is to take a little more time and make that happen and answer some of those questions. Anyway, that's where I'm leaning as of now. But I hope that doesn't discourage Brandon and the folks from Ogden City, towards moving forward on this project, because as a philosophical perspective, I think it's a good idea. Just, again, the devil being in the details. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ebert, are there any other comments?
No, I think we've spent some time. We actually have from this probably a better process we've evolved to have our financial folks more at a ground level as we start working with specific areas in CRAs, as we start reaching out to specific developers, or they come to municipalities or to the county in the request. So I like the process we have now. There does seem to be some momentum to continue moving this forward. I know developers have applied for historical tax credits or new building tax credits and have started the process of moving developments forward. So I think we're kind of in a little bit of a pickle because many times if you change the percentages that were initially agreed upon, then it really goes off financing for many of these multi-million-dollar projects. So that's a little bit of the concern I have, but I don't have any further questions at this point.
My only comment has to do with process, and while this particular project has identified some of the weakness of Weber County process, I will, while you're in the room, Mr. Cooper, we've had this conversation in other meetings, but we recognize that our process can be made better. We are currently, from this point, and some of it because of this particular project, are now including other individuals, including elected officials, in that process to vet these projects. And so the county will have a much better framework by which you can operate from this point moving forward in case a 12th Street RDA comes to us, or a 36th Street RDA, or whatever street or avenue happens to come from this point forward. There will be I'm committing to you that there will be a more or a clearer framework for you to know in advance what we're willing to do, and that framework will be created by those who both have financial responsibility, but also community responsibility, and then we'll exercise judicial balance as a commission for that. So I wanted to make that, and I appreciate the dialogue that's gone on with this item so that point could be made. If there's no other questions, is there a motion by either commissioner one way or the other on this item number 8?
Well, I'll make a motion we approve the contract by between Weber County and Ogden City Redevelopment Agency to allow Ogden City Redevelopment Agency to use tax increment from the Adams Place project area to fund the project area and plan.
I have a motion. Is there a second? I will second that motion. Is there any other discussion? None being heard, I'll call for the vote on item number 8. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None being heard, item 8 passes. Item number 8, public comments. If you'd please limit those comments to 3 minutes, would appreciate it. If you'd state your name and your address, please, for the record.
Sure. I have a paper as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can you give another copy? Can we have another copy for Commissioner Gibson? Thank you.
My name's Renee Smith.
Hello, Ms. Smith.
Hello. I built a house in Eden, Utah, and I can't get up my driveway without scraping my bumper. There is no law to protect me. There's no ordinance to protect me. And I would like you to consider an ordinance or something to help somebody like me that wouldn't know building standards to be able to prevent things like this from happening. So, to give you a little bit of history, I started the construction in 2015. The builder was Eco Builder. His name's Dave Booth. The house originally was supposed to be a 2,000 square foot house. And after $155,000 had been dispersed from the bank, the builder went into the house, to the property and said, wait a minute, it's going to cost $70,000 more to construct this house. So let's just turn it from a 2,000 square foot house to a 3,000 square foot house, and it's not going to cost you any more because I padded my expenses to it. So he went to the bank and we got it all approved that it wasn't going to cost any more. Here now, the driveway is not compliant with the NRA. Is it? It's not compliant to the code or the recommendations for the builder standards.
Your driveway?
My driveway.
Okay.
Okay, my driveway, everybody that comes to my house scrapes their bumper. And it's scary because Marin was going down on the last snow slope, one of the people there, and she had an SUV and she was backing down it, and even though the driveway had been plowed, the car started to slide and it was perpendicular to my driveway. And there was a 1-year-old in the car, and she felt like it was on such a steep slope that that her SUV was going to tip. Her letter is the last comment on this, but I'll keep going forward. So as I've done the evaluation of the house, of the property, you can see the picture. That's it under construction, and this is the slope of it. And if you go back to the first page, the top of the driveway is 17.77. The bottom of it is 17.10, but in the middle, it's 24% grade. And I can't get the builder to fix it because there's no law or there's no ordinance to be able to help me. I'm asking you, can you evaluate the situation to protect people like me from having to be able to go through the court of law and just get an ordinance? I guess in this Salt Lake County, their ordinance is 12%. Nobody can go over a 12% grade. And so, but there's nothing here for me to help me. So right now, I complained to Dave Booth numerous times. He refuses to fix it without me paying more money, even though it was his mix-up and his screw-up to begin with. So I tried to sell the house, and multiple buyers it's depreciating the value of the house because it's too steep of a driveway for them to get down. And then I don't have enough technical expertise to be able to do this myself. I really just need an ordinance in place to be able to help somebody like me. And then on the very last page, this will be economically beneficial for you too, because as the construction happened, they actually ripped up the street. So I would just really appreciate you considering making an ordinance or something to be able to help me.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Appreciate that. Mr. Wilkinson, would you meet with Ms. Smith after and maybe direct her with that? Mr. Wilkinson's the one with the handsome hairline.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments for this body? None being heard, then I'll entertain a motion for item number I.
I move to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. That's non-debatable, and we stand adjourned. Thank you.